Production funding for this program is made possible in part by the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello, and thank you for joining us. I'm John Minervini, founder of the food website The Fork. My guest today is the winner of the second season of the reality TV show Master Chef Junior. He has cooked on the Today Show and met the First Lady and the President. And get this, he's only 12 years old. Logan Guleff, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, Logan, I first met you in the fall. It was at the American Food Journalists Conference at the Peabody, and we were in a seminar on social media.
Yeah.
You raised your hand and asked a question, and the first thing I thought was, gosh, that guy is so young. But then the second thing I thought was, what a pro. You were asking about being a blogger and getting started and how to get your name out there. What I want to know is, where does that professionalism come from?
Well, the professionalism really comes out is when I'm doing things like this, doing cooking segments, you always have to be professional or it looks cheesy.
Right.
It's just how it goes. And if you're not professional and you don't hold yourself to that standard, then it just comes across like a very cheesy TV.
You know, and I think not a lot of 12-year-olds would know that. I read on your website, which is orderupwithlogan.blogspot.com, I read that you started cooking when you were 2 years old.
Yes.
Tell me, what does that mean? What do you cook when you're 2 years old?
Well, when you're 2 years old, there's a few steps to cooking. There's like the really easy stuff like pigs in a blanket, deviled eggs. I did those a lot, and making morning coffee for my mom.
Mm-hmm.
So I made that a lot, and then you really start ramping up into steak, fish, vegetables, and then finally when you're at the very advanced stages, you actually start making meals.
Wow. I mean, I'm thinking of a 2-year-old. A 2-year-old can talk some.
A little bit.
And a 2-year-old can walk maybe a little.
Well, kind of a little bit, but...
and so you were making coffee when you were that
making
old?
coffee. I would shove the piano bench up there, up against the cupboard. I would step up there. I would take 2 scoops of coffee, and sometimes the coffee went everywhere. Everywhere. And other times it went pretty smoothly, and I still make really good coffee.
Okay, so what kind of coffee do you make?
Just the regular drip pot, and recently I got an espresso machine from my grandma.
That's fabulous.
Yes.
So, okay, you're 2 years old and you're cooking coffee at home, and then when you're 9 years old, you win a cooking contest and you go to the White House.
Yeah.
So how do we get from making coffee at home to meeting the President and First Lady? How do you get there?
The key thing there is that I didn't just like cook the food. Before that, when I was like one and a half, I was playing with plastic food. So I had like little plastic potatoes, plastic broccoli, and my favorite ones were the ones that I could take like this little plastic knife and I could cut them apart with Velcro. Love Velcro. Velcro's the best thing ever.
That's great. All right, so you're playing with plastic food, you're making coffee. How did you start cooking for real?
Well, then my mom really helped the kitchen be a safe environment where like she would turn on the stove and she would help me and really get me through the hard part where you want to be cooking the steak, but the splatter comes back at you.
Right.
Splatter's the worst thing ever.
You know, I've seen you talk about splatter. It's a pet peeve of yours.
Yes, it's terrible.
So when you're cooking, what are you thinking about? What's going through your mind?
Well, I'm really thinking about how cooking is kind of a science in a way, because when you essentially think about cooking, you're adding heat to a food. So you're like heating up the meat, you're heating up the vegetables, you're heating everything up. And then there's more of the artistry of it, where you're heating it in a pan, or you're doing more of these like artful cooking.
So, and is that a natural combination for you? The science on one hand and the artistry on the other?
Yes, all cooking really goes through that. Like there's the science parts, like the molecular gastronomy, that's really fun, where you like spherify stuff, and there's direct spherification and reverse spherification, and those are really cool. And then on the other side, you have like French cooking, soul cooking, home style cooking, and that's more of a pinch of this, pinch of that, a little bit of that.
Do you come down on one side or the other?
No, you really can't fall on one side or the other, because when you fall on, let's say you fall on the science side, then you're just doing that, and there's no real familiarity with it.
Sure. So the dish that you made that won this contest that took you to the White House was a tuna schooner.
Yes.
What's a tuna schooner?
Well, you know how there's like the schooner ship? So you take the little pepper, you cut it in half, you take all the seeds out, then you put in my tuna quinoa salad, and that's tuna, quinoa, mayo, just the normal stuff that you put in a tuna salad. And then you stuff the pepper boats, and you cut out like a little sail, a little triangle, and then you just put it in.
Now, what's the sail made of?
Lettuce.
Lettuce.
Yes.
Okay. So you came up with that. You make a lot of your own recipes. Tell me, how does a recipe come into your mind?
Well, a recipe really starts out with a goal. Like, what do you really want this recipe to do? Well, like when I'm making one of my rubs, I want this rub to make the meat taste good. I want it to make the whatever it is taste good. Like one of my favorite blends that I've made is a good egg seasoning for eggs. You never really think about seasoning eggs. You just think about salt and pepper.
And you can buy that seasoning on your website, isn't that right?
Yes, I'm trying to get a package and selling deal out, and so we're still in the works with that, but hopefully pretty soon it'll be for sale.
Sounds great. So, okay, you met Barack and Michelle. Did you get a sense of what they were like?
They were very, very nice, and the whole Kids State dinner was very nice. But before I did that, I did the Jif Most Creative Peanut Butter Sandwich contest. And that I made the Chomp Burger, and it's like a peanut butter turkey burger with a yakisoba sauce and broccoli slaw and apple. And I made that when I was like 8. And so that was my very, very, very first recipe that I ever made.
And that won, right, the contest?
That got me runner-up, and so I got a free trip to New York and some money and a great experience.
That's awesome. You know what? You've won one other contest, which I have to ask you about, which is the spam contest. And we're not talking about spam email. We're talking about canned meat.
Canned spam, yes.
Tell me about that contest.
Well, you got to take the spam and you got to make it kind of gourmet. You got to make it taste good, and you got to make it true to spam. So I took the spam, I grated it. Well, actually, I had my mom grate it, so.
How did she feel about that?
Not very happy. She's still mad at me. And I grated some potato, and I made this kind of like spam hash Reuben kind of thing with sauerkraut and mustard. And probably the reason why I didn't quite get first place on that is I had a soccer game. So I had to deliver it like 9, and the judging was 12.
Okay.
So it sat there. And somehow I still got second place.
That's amazing. Yeah. So I want to talk about MasterChef, but first I have to ask you about the bow ties.
Yes.
So that's become a signature look for you. Tell me about the bow ties.
Well, the bow ties, most of them are handmade by my godmother. And so she, like right before I had to go, we went there and we were like, well, Aunt Nikki, can you make all of these bow ties? And we go to the fabric store, we pick out a ton of fabric, we make tons of bow ties. This one's a handmade one.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay, what's on this one?
This one is green beans.
Wow.
Yeah.
I saw it and I thought it was bacteria or something, but it is
it's green
very
beans.
artful green beans. So did you wear the bow tie for your audition?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I did. It was a present that I got from theater. Like one of my friends in theater, nice guy, wore a bow tie or a necktie, and so he said, oh yeah, everybody needs to wear a bow tie, and so my mom got him a bow tie and me a bow tie.
Logan, that's great. Now I thought this was amazing when I heard it. The season taped in spring.
Yes.
But it didn't air until fall.
Yes.
So you won in springtime,
yes.
And you knew that you won, but you couldn't tell anybody. Did that just kill you?
Well, when you sign the contract, it basically says, well, if I do spill the beans on this, then I have to pay you $1 million. I have to pay you all my prize money. I forfeit the winning, pretty much. And yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that would be
That would be terrible.
tough. So would people, this is MasterChef Season 2 with Gordon Ramsay.
Yes.
Would people ask you if you won?
Well, kind of in a weird way. They would go like, well, did you do well? Did you win? And I was, well, one of the easiest things to say is, tune in and watch.
That's good. I like that. So, okay, Gordon Ramsay has a reputation of being a tough guy. Were you nervous about meeting him?
No, not really. I mean, I watched all of his shows. Some of them, I watched them all. And MasterChef and MasterChef Junior were really, really interesting to me. And so I auditioned in Dallas. Dad drove me all the way there. Dad loves reality TV. That's one of the most important things we need to remember here. So when they asked me if I wanted to be on the cast, Dad was like, go for it. And so I got on the cast, and I naturally wanted to meet Gordon. And so it was very interesting to see his softer side, and then when it came to the pop-up restaurant, to see his hard, keeping you to his standards side.
Sure. What was it like working with the other kids? Did you guys get along?
Well, we were all there to win. That's the key thing that you have to remember. All of us thought that we were going to win, that we were good enough to win, and that we were going to.
So in the second to last episode, you made a salmon poached in olive oil, and the judges said it was a stroke of genius. I want to know, what made you choose that unusual preparation?
Well, throughout the entire competition, everybody's done pan-searing, roasting, sautéing, pretty much everything but like poaching and oil poaching. So I needed something to get out of the box. Because if I just pan-sear it and I do some flavors on it, then it's just the same old skills that I've been showing you this entire time. So I need to come up with something new in order to really show that I can reinvent myself.
So, okay, fast forward. You're standing on stage. You've just won MasterChef. The confetti is falling down all around you. What's going through your mind?
Well, it was kind of, my philosophy on it was that you have to take it one step at a time, one challenge at a time, and really go through it that way. And I didn't really think that I would ever win. It always happens to somebody else. Never happens to you. And that's really how it felt.
Okay, so you won $100,000, which is a ton of money. It's hard to even think about that much money. Have you and your parents talked about what you're going to do with it?
In the bank.
There you go.
Yeah, college.
College. Okay,
Yeah,
so you do want to go to college.
Of course. How could I not?
It's a question. I mean, you could open a restaurant right now, I think.
Well, the problem with opening a restaurant is it takes more skills than I currently have. And that's managing people, managing waitstaff, making sure that the food comes out, all the taxes, health regulations, just a ton of stuff.
Wow.
That you have to know how to do in order to run a restaurant.
So if you weren't a chef, what do you think you would be?
Well, I have a pretty long list of things I could be. I could be an oceanographer, an astronaut, a garbage man.
Okay, oceanographer and astronaut, believe it or not, I can get behind those. Garbage man?
Well, that one was from when I was 3, and I always, or 2 or 3 or 1 or around there. And we would follow these garbage trucks that scoop stuff up. So they had like the little arm, and it would go and it would scoop the stuff up, put it in the dump truck. Love those trucks. I followed them around for years. Okay. And I always wanted to like be the guy operating the truck.
Wow, okay. So earlier this week, I put the word out on Facebook that I was going to be interviewing you. And people were so excited. You have such a huge fan base. I've got a few of their questions here. Sally from Facebook wants to know, not many boys cook. And what's it like being a boy who cooks?
Well, you always think of it as a stereotype that girls are going to cook. But when you really think about it, no matter where you are, as if you're like trapped in the wilderness, you need to know how to make it so that you get all the bad bacteria off of the raw meat to really be able to make it safe and edible. And that's a really good survival skill. And no matter what, it's also a very good cheap date skill. So you can take like a steak and some potatoes, and it may only cost you like $10, but you can make it seem like a $40 meal if you cook it right.
Logan, that's really exciting. I wish you the best of luck with that.
Thank you.
Okay, this next question is from Jeff on Facebook. How did you get so comfortable being yourself? And what advice do you have for kids who are struggling with that?
Well, you kind of have to think about all the unique things that you do best. Like I do rock climbing, laser tag, video game playing. I do a bunch of stuff. I do soccer, and so that when you really have to be yourself, you can't really like become like a chef guy and be like, oh, your food sucks. I'm just gonna be like everybody else. You really have to understand that you have to have your own path.
Logan, that's great. Well, when we come back, and I'm really excited about this, Logan is going to give us a demonstration of his cooking skills. We'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back. Logan, I know that you got here early and you've been furiously preparing this. Tell me, what are we going to be eating today?
Well, today we will be doing lamb chops. So first things that we're going to need to be doing here is we're going to need to be seasoning. One of the key things about seasoning is you need to season high so that you get more even salt on it.
Okay, so that's just literally holding your hand high up in the air?
Holding it up high. That's one of the easiest things that you can do, and it really gets them seasoned better.
So what's going on inside the meat right now?
It's just kind of thawed and really nice. Nothing really too much is going on in the meat right now. Just kind of chilling there, getting it seasoned.
And so one of the things that you brought for us is a new rub that you've created yourself.
Yeah, I'm gonna put that on after I put these guys in. So let's get some oil in this pan right here. There we go, that much. Much will about work.
So would you say that's about a tablespoon?
Maybe, around there.
Okay.
Around there, maybe a teaspoon.
And what temperature should we be cooking the lamb at?
Medium. One of the key things about lamb is that it needs to be served a little bit raw.
Okay.
All right, my pan isn't quite hot enough, so let's just give that a minute to heat up, and we can work on our couscous.
Sounds good.
So let's just get our couscous in there.
So we have boiling water. How much? What's the ratio of couscous to water?
I think it's about a cup to a cup, maybe.
Okay, so 1 to 1.
Sure.
That's easy.
I think so, around there. I have about a cup of water here.
And did we salt the water?
Yes, of course.
Okay, great.
It's one of the key things that we need to do, so then we can just put our lid back on there.
Now, Logan, you create a lot of your own recipes. I have to ask you, have you ever created something that just totally flopped?
Yes, I've done that many, many, many times.
Tell me about one of those.
Well, one day I decided that I was going to make like a sugary lime.
Okay.
Like a sugary lime thing, and that just totally flopped.
Okay, was it a drink?
No, it was like a syrup, and oh God. It's terrible. All right, so we can about drop these in now. Not quite hot enough, but
okay, great.
It'll work for now.
So tell us about this ingredient that you're working with right now.
Right now I'm working with some candied ginger here. And so I'm just cutting it up to put in my couscous when my couscous is done. And so, yeah, just cutting that up, trying to get my lamb seared off here.
So, but okay, for your friends who don't cook a whole lot.
Yes.
What do you tell them? If you're trying to give them one thing to do to make their food lives better, what do you say?
One of my favorite, I don't know, that's a pretty tough one. Butter is one of your best ingredients, so is herbs.
Right.
Butter and herbs. Those are your two best ingredients that you could ever use.
For an amateur chef like me, they would just ramp up the flavor really fast.
Yes, herbs. That is the secret to cooking well, is herbs.
Okay, great.
If you're not using herbs, like I've got like some ground up mint in there and a bunch of other stuff. So you gotta have the herbs in order to make this stuff really good.
All right, so we're really sizzling over there. Can I come take a sniff?
Maybe. It's just supposed to be sizzling.
Logan, that's terrific.
Yep, and I've got my couscous here, so I can just fluff this up. As you can tell, the couscous has kind of fluffed itself up, and it's looking really good, so I can just throw in my candied ginger, some pine nuts,
That's beautiful.
some raisins, just golden raisins in
Now
here.
you're just eyeballing this. How much are we using?
We're using about like 5 raisins, a bunch of pine nuts. I really like pine nuts. We can
Great.
use some more pine nuts in there.
Now, Logan, you have just finished cooking at the Oscars, right?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Well, I did a pre-Oscar warm-up for E! Entertainment, I think, or something like that. And that was really a great adventure in LA. And I really enjoyed that. That was great.
So what did you make?
Made chicken and waffles, inspired by Whiplash.
That's great. So, okay, drumstick for a drum movie. I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yep, so then we can just put the lid on
Okay,
this.
so where are we in our recipe right now?
So now we still got the lamb, we got our couscous, which is done. Let me open up the pot if you want to give it a try. I have a spoon.
Oh, yes. Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
Logan, I did not have breakfast today, so this is a treat. That is really good. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, so now we can kind of move our lamb around here. As you can tell, it's splattering a bit, but we just really need to flip it. Sometimes you can use like 2. I forgot to bring a little spatula here. Lamb is best served a little rare, so we're just kind of...
And how will we know when it's rare? How will we know when it's getting there?
Well, one of the secrets to cooking any meat is that... All right, let me just get this one flipped off. Is that when you feel it with like a tong or something, you see that corresponds to your hand.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
Okay, so
like,
show me, show me.
Here's the rare.
Okay, rare.
Rare right here.
Okay.
Medium rare. That's where everybody likes their steak.
Medium rare, okay.
And that's well done.
Yeah, we don't go there.
We really don't go there. And so now we're just gonna sear these off some more.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, we can.
Logan, I have to ask you a question, and this might be controversial.
Yes.
Do you have a favorite restaurant in Memphis?
Well, I really have a lot of restaurants that I like a lot. Like, I really like Josh at Strano's. I'm friends with a lot of Memphis chefs. Chef Ben at Tsunami, he's a really good friend of mine. So is Tim at Owood Shack. He's a great guy.
And you work with Chef Felicia Willette,
yes,
right? Tell me about that.
Right now I'm working on a charity Make-A-Wish dinner, and we're still in the works with that one.
But you're cooking professionally already at age 12.
Well, not really. One of the key things is that there's home cooking. Like right now, I'm doing like a home cooked meal right here kind of deal. But there's a big difference is that, let's see if we can just try and sear off the fat on these. That's another secret to do with these lamb chops.
Okay, wow, because I see a lot of fat on this side, and you can get rid of that?
Yes, you can just sear it right off, and it'll just fry away pretty much.
Okay, great.
A little bit.
Now, I heard you mention the restaurant Elwood Shack. I've never been there. What is it?
Well, you know the Lowe's parking lot on Summer?
I do know that Lowe's.
Yeah, and you know that little shack? Well, that's where it is. That old Pizza Hut.
How did you find your way to a shack in a Lowe's parking lot?
Well, I really heard about it. I heard that their fish tacos were great.
Okay.
And so I went there. I tried the fish tacos. Got really good friends with Tim. And been going back ever since. I got my dad hooked on the brisket taco.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
Logan, we've got just a couple of minutes left. Are we getting close?
Yeah, we just need to sear off this. Yeah, we can get these guys off the heat.
Okay, that's
Another
great.
secret to meat is that you've really got to let it rest.
Okay, so tell me about letting it rest. Why are we doing that?
Well, we're letting it rest so that it'll get all those juices will stay inside of the meat. And so we can just let it rest for a little bit. We can take some of my new seasoning.
Okay, and so tell me about the new seasoning. What's in there?
Well, this is Logan's Rub Bombay, and I really can't tell you that much about it. That's one of the things about...
It's proprietary, I get it. It's yours, you got to keep that secret.
Sometimes, but sometimes the best thing to do is that with a spice rub is that people can really, really steal it. But with a restaurant, you can't really steal an idea for a restaurant.
You can't patent a recipe.
You really can't. So sometimes you just gotta kind of keep it a secret.
Yeah.
So here we have just some fried up asparagus that I put in the pan.
Okay, well that's great. Logan, this is our last question. It's from Margot on Facebook. She asks, if you could create the perfect restaurant in Memphis, what would it be?
That's tough. I think it would be a mixture of like Tsunami and Elwood Shack. And the taco truck, which is right next to Elwood Shack.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Well, I want to see that one day from you. Can we taste this? Is
Yes.
it time?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, I am really excited about this. Here we go.
Yeah. So.
Oh my gosh.
All right. So.
But man, is that delicious. Logan, I cannot believe it. We are out of time.
Oh.
I want to thank you so much for being here. I'm going to be following your adventures on your website, which is orderupwithlogan.blogspot.com.
Yep.
People can also follow you on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
And they're all the same.
Logan Jr. Chef. Thank you so much, and thank you.